While there are plenty of questionable fashion trends that come and go, there are some that were so strange that it's hard to understand why anyone would think they were stylish. Today, we'll be taking a look through the 15 most weird outfits. Number 15. Katy Perry's Chandelier. We'd think you'd agree that chandeliers look pretty when hung up in a ballroom, but at the 2019 Met Gala, Katy Perry just had to ignite the light and let it shine when she wore a fully functional rendition. It was essentially a gray dress and a cap that had chandelier extensions on it, and all the candles on it used electricity so that they could light up just like the real thing. In terms of the designer, it was reportedly custom-made by Moschino, and it certainly made Katy stand apart from the rest. We think it's fair to say that Perry just owned the night while wearing this dress. Number 14. The Sun God. While ancient Egypt may be one of the most beloved historical time periods, we'd say that Billy Porter's outfit at the 2019 Met Gala took things just a bit too far. That's because after being carried in by 6 shirtless men in ancient Egyptian attire, he was put down and showed off a bejeweled catsuit outfitted with 3-meter wings, 24-karat gold headpiece, and custom gold-leaf Giuseppe Zanotti shoes, and fine jewels by Andreoli, John Hardy, and Oscar Heyman. While many praised him for having such a great fashion sense, many others thought that it looked more like a golden moth and that the outfit was really indulgent. However, regardless of where you stand, we think you'd agree that the outfit was pretty strange. Number 13. Jared Leto's Severed Head. Jared Leto is well known for his unique fashion sense, but none of his outfits quite match the time that he carried around a severed head. Put together for the 2019 Met Gala, he wore a long red Gucci robe, silver crystals, and see-through gloves, but then topped off the look by carrying a carbon copy of his head. Now, the theme of the night was camp, and this was what inspired fashion designer Alessandro Michele to create the outfit based on Susan Sontag's famous 1964 essay, Camp: Notes on Fashion. And while even Leto himself remarked that it's a little bizarre, he reportedly was happy to strut around all night in his one-of-a-kind outfit. Number 12. The Denim Duo. If you grew up in the early 2000s, chances are you're well acquainted with both Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. However, while they may have been a power couple during their short stint together between 1998 and 2002, they certainly made a few fashion choices that were less than ideal. The most obvious was their decision to dress entirely in denim at the American Music Awards in 2001. More specifically, Britney wore a strapless dress that was designed with various shades of blue denim and paired with a denim purse and various shiny pieces of jewelry. Justin was right by her side in a tuxedo jacket and jeans designed with different patches of denim, and also had a diamond necklace to match Britney's bling. Yet, as fate would have it, the couple would break up soon after. However, that didn't mean that there were any ill feelings, because in 2020, Justin Timberlake admitted on Lance Bass's podcast that he still loved the look. Number 11. Goth outfits. While goth fashion may be relatively popular, its countercultural style certainly gives it a spot on this list, finding its inspiration from the mourning clothes of the Victorian era and really evolving to what it is today thanks to the grunge rock scene. Goth outfits are typically dark in nature and will feature such things as black clothing, black makeup, chains, and black hair dye. They also come in different varieties, with these including traditional goth, cyber goth, hot goth, and even the Japanese rendition, Goth Iolita. These other renditions will often use the main goth look and add other stylistic features to it, producing a fashion that is truly unique. So we think it's fair to say that while goth clothing may be a bit outlandish, it certainly is here to stay. Number 10. Arsenic dresses. While being drop-dead gorgeous is the goal of many people out there, in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, they would often drop dead in the pursuit of being gorgeous thanks to arsenic dresses. You see, at this point in history, the mainstream scientific community was mixed on their views of arsenic. They believed that it could be both poisonous and good for one's health depending on the circumstances. As a result, Scheele's green and Paris green, which were the premier green pigments of the day, had the green light from the public to use arsenic in order to produce a bright green color. This pigment was not only used in everything from dresses to curtains to candlesticks, but was filled with copper arsenite, and soon people who either worked with or consumed things that used this color began becoming sick and eventually dying. Soon people put two and two together and decided to stop wearing things that used these pigments, but due to poor regulations, death thanks to arsenic still remained commonplace. However, by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, regulations against arsenic-laced products were enacted, and it was not until later in the 20th century that its use was completely eradicated. Thus, despite the dangers, it took a very long time for women to stop falling victim to this not-so-fabulous fashion trend. Number 9. Corsets. While many modern fashion icons are obsessed with becoming thin, in the olden days, corsets would do a lot of the work for you. A trademark of the Victorian era, corsets are by definition undergarments that would change one's waist so it would become thinner, therefore allowing the wearer to fit into outfits with extremely thin waists. They would typically be made out of layered fabric, stiffened with glue and tightly laced, which would enable it to constrict one's body into a desired shape. They reportedly first became popular after Italian noblewoman Catherine de' Medici began wearing them in the mid-1500s. And by the 1600s, they were all the rage in courts across Europe, with women wearing them far and wide in order to maintain a feminine figure. At different periods in history, they were worn as both under and outer wear, and over the years, they eventually evolved so that by the 1800s, they were extremely constricting at the waist. But by the early 1900s, there was less support of the breasts in favoring of maintaining a position that did irreparable damage to one's back. Regardless, by the mid-1900s, they had fallen out of fashion, and while they have made somewhat of a comeback today, most that are on the market are much less extreme than historical counterparts. We are constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Morph Suits. Most outfits are meant to make you stand out, yet a morph suit will quickly make you unrecognizable. For those of you who don't know, a morph suit is essentially a skin-tight garment that covers your entire body, making the wearer anonymous to all of those around them. Known as a zentai suit in Japan, it's typically made out of a mix of spandex and nylon and comes in a large assortment of colors. They often make appearances at events such as sports games and concerts, and wearers will often spruce up their costume by wearing funny hats or crazy outfits. Due to their striking appearance, they've even made their way into some major music videos, with the Black Eyed Peas' Boom Boom Pow being chief among them. However, their level of anonymity is also a turnoff to many organizations, and thus sports leagues such as the MLB actually ban morph suits from their stadiums. However, given their popularity, we doubt these crazy outfits will truly go out of fashion anytime soon. Number 7. Zoot Suits. Most of the outfits on this list can safely be considered to be fashion crimes. However, the only ones to have indirectly caused mobs and riots are zoot suits. First becoming popular in the 1930s, they were men's suits that supported high-waisted, wide-legged, tight-cuffed, pegged trousers and long coats with wide lapels and wide padded shoulders. In other words, they looked like sloppier versions of the suits we are used to seeing today. The fashion gained a lot of steam amongst minority groups such as African Americans, Italian Americans, and Mexican Americans, yet they soon became the scapegoat for some race-based hate throughout World War II. That's because zoot suits were widely criticized for being a waste of cloth during a time when cloth was needed on the front, so those who wore them were targeted by mobs in many cities. To be clear, the underlying reason for these mobs were due to racism, but the fact that the zoot suits were seen as unpatriotic provided the perfect scapegoat, and this led to the famous zoot suit mob that injured over 150 people. So we think it's fair to say that while this outfit was a little weird, it also puts its wearers in some serious danger. Number 6. The Swiss Guard outfit. If you look at the average soldier today, chances are you'll see someone wearing camo and donning a round helmet. However, at the Vatican, you'll notice the army dresses a little differently. That's because they still use a uniform that's reminiscent of the 1600s. While only used on ceremonial occasions, the red, yellow, and blue color was designed by Renaissance maestro Raphael and made to resemble the family colors of the powerful Medici family. It's largely remained the same ever since. However, that doesn't mean there hasn't been a few design changes. In particular, they've now ditched their swords for the Sig Sauer P220 pistol and the Sig SG550 rifle. a 3D printed helmet made of UV-resistant PVC, and a bottle of pepper spray. As such, they now only use their swords for ceremonial purposes. Interestingly enough, if you too would like to wear this weird outfit, then you're going to have to pass quite a few hoops. In particular, to apply to be in the Swiss Guards, you have to be a Swiss Catholic who is male, between 19 and 30 years old, at least 174 centimeters tall, and has completed basic training with the Swiss Army. As you might expect, people who fit this criteria are few and far between. Yet despite this, the 135-man regiment has been around since 1506, making it one of the world's oldest standing military units. While the outfit may look weird, being a Swiss Guard would certainly be pretty cool. Number 5. The Plague Doctor. While COVID-19 may be pretty bad, we think you'd agree that the bubonic plague was a whole lot worse. Hitting Europe in the mid-14th century, this plague not only spread extremely quickly, but was extremely grotesque in nature, causing sufferers to develop massive black bulbs and skin necroses that, in the majority of cases, would end up killing its victims. In total, this plague tragically ended up wiping out about 25 to 60% of Europe's population, but that didn't stop European doctors from trying to do something about it. At the time, their knowledge of science and medicine was pretty limited, and as a result, they created an outfit that, by most modern medical standards, would be seen as absolutely ridiculous. The getup typically consisted of a long black overcoat, gloves, boots, and an outer overclothing garment, with all this being complemented by a massive beak. This was the medieval equivalent of a modern surgical mask, and it would typically cover one's entire face and was shaped like the beak of a large bird. The beak would usually be stuffed with sweet or strong-smelling substances such as dried flowers, herbs, berries, and tree gum that would supposedly protect against the disease, as they believed that their strong smell would counter the, quote, evil smells of the plague and prevent them from becoming infected. Beyond the beak, they would also wear a wide-brimmed leather hat to indicate their status as a doctor, and a wooden cane that would be used to examine patients. Remove clothing, keep people away, and indicate areas in need of attention. However, due to their ineffectiveness, there were many plague doctors that ended up getting infected themselves. And to top this off, the outfit even ended up becoming a symbol of darkness and death, as it was often the last thing someone would see before dying of the plague. So we think it's fair to say that this outfit wasn't all that hot, even during the time period. Number 4. British barristers. If you happen to be a lawyer in Britain, then you may still wear a relic from the past in your everyday court proceedings. That's because even today, it's common practice for both lawyers and judges to wear white wigs in British courtrooms. Now, the trend began in the late 1600s, and their primary purpose was an emblem of anonymity, as they were a symbolic attempt to distance the wearer from personal involvement, while also drawing upon the supremacy of the law. However, it was also used as a balding cover-up, as syphilis-related balding was very widespread amongst the upper classes, and thus these wigs ensured that it would not be obvious that one had contracted the STD. Generally speaking, lawyers' wigs were less ornate than judges' wigs, and they were usually made out of horsehair. While this may seem strange, it was considered to be of the finest materials around, as a full-fledged wig of horsehair could easily fetch a price of a few $1,000s. And as a result, many lawyers and judges would have to resort to wigs made from goat hair, spooled cotton, or at times even human corpses, if they couldn't pony up enough money. The wigs would then be powdered to give them their white color, and at times they would be so large that a lawyer or judge would be forced to hold it in place with one hand to ensure that it did not fall off. Now, over time, the wigs became less popular, yet until about 10 years ago, they were still commonly worn amongst all lawyers in both Britain and many other Commonwealth countries. However, nowadays they are no longer required by law in many areas, yet many still wear them in an attempt to keep the tradition alive. Number 3. Macaroni men. While there are many fashionistas out there that take it to the extreme, the Macaroni men of the mid-18th century were certainly chief among them hundreds of years ago. By definition, these were men who would dress up in outlandish outfits that were supposed to be high fashion, and they were often associated with feminine traits, bourgeoisie excess, and homosexuality. The idea first came about because men often took up macaroni outfits after having toured Europe, and it was after visiting Italy that they would call anything that was fashionable or à la mode as very macaroni, thus leading to the claim that they had joined the Macaroni Club. The Macaroni community, if you will, first centered around young men acquiring a strong taste for arts such as poetry, sculpting, and music, but soon developed to the point where only extravagant fashion was the goal. Generally speaking, most of their clothing came from places such as France and Italy, and the bright colors, silk, and lavish lace were characteristic of their outfits, which were often narrowly cut to fit tightly over one's body, while various perfumes would make them smell a step above the rest. However, it was their wigs that really made them stand out, as they were often very large and powdered, and to add to the absurdity of them, they would often have a very small hat, called a neve noir, that would sit on top of it. Due to all of this extravagance, macaronis were ridiculed and satirized by much of the mass media with the lyric, "He stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni," even referring to them. However, as time went on, the trend eventually faded away, and today you can unfortunately no longer find any macaronis. Number 2. Hobble skirts. In today's day and age, hobbling about would not be exactly seen as a desirable trait, but in the early 1900s, there was a brief period of some time they really were all in the rage. In essence, these outfits were long dresses that were tied at a low point on the legs so that the wearer would be forced to take small, supposedly effeminate steps, and they apparently became high fashion thanks to one of the first female airplane passengers. You see, after a certain Mrs. Edith Hart Oberg became the first woman to fly as a passenger in an airplane in 1908, she caught the attention of a certain Mr. Paul Poiret, who supposedly drew inspiration from her decision to tie a rope securely around her skirt at her ankles to keep it from blowing in the wind during the flight. This led to him creating these skirts as a fashion trend, and they caught on due to them accentuating the thinness of one's legs. However, the media soon began to ridicule them, calling them speed limit skirts and petitioning for hobble skirt races, and they soon began to have a human toll, as women who were wearing them were often too immobile to save themselves from danger, with a notable example being a woman who drowned in a lake after falling in while wearing one. Regardless of the risks, they remained popular for a few years, yet by World War I they began to become obsolete, as the women taking the place of men in the factories had to be mobile in order to work efficiently. Therefore, while this trend was certainly strange, we're glad it ended after only a few years. Number 1. The crinoline. While many outfits attempt to make the wearer look thin and slim, the crinoline made the wearer look a lot wider than they should have been. Invented in the early 1840s, these were essentially large contraptions that would ruffle out one's skirt so that it appeared much wider, creating a large circle at the bottom part of their attire. Generally speaking, someone would have to wear multiple petticoats in order for the effect to work, and initially they were made out of both horsehair and linen. Then in 1856, a fashion designer by the name of R.C. Millier patented the cage crinoline, which was made of a springy steel rather than hard linen or cloth, thus providing a degree of lightness and flexibility that enabled women to walk and sit while wearing them. These replaced the old crinolines overnight, and soon this design became mass-produced so that even the poor could afford it. This initiated a flurry of criticism of the fashion trend by the media, which often published cartoons of girls using fictional blow-up crinolines to highlight the excessiveness of the fashion item. In all honesty, this was somewhat warranted, as some crinolines were so wide that they reached a ridiculous 1.8 meters in diameter. However, the crinoline also had a dark side, as its grandeur and complexity often meant that it would get caught in things such as carriage wheels and factory machines, leading to some seriously gruesome side effects for the women involved. Thus, by the 1870s, the crinoline had largely fallen out of style, as its impracticality and danger was no longer worth the risk to the wearer. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.